Why do customers see you but still scroll past without paying attention? You might be doing everything right, running ads, designing packaging, posting regularly, but still not making any sales. The problem doesn't lie in the product. The problem lies in this: you haven't reached the right person. In this video, you'll witness a hands-on brand excavation session where all assumptions are torn apart. The ideal customer profile is reconstructed from the smallest details, and the brand strategy begins to be written based on truth, not intuition. This is the critical foundation before any design, campaign, or slogan is created. Are you saying what you want or what the customer needs to hear? Don't let your brand slip past their eyes just because of a single misstep at the beginning. Part 1. From within to faced. A brand is not born in the mirror. A brand is not born from a mirror, but from someone else's gaze. It's not what you think of yourself that matters, but the impression people carry after the first encounter. Subjectivity, no matter how well-intentioned, always becomes a fog that obscures the truth. The more attached you are to your own brand, the more likely you are to suffer from emotional colorblindness. And the frightening part is, you think you're seeing clearly. This is the blind spot most brands fall into. When starting the branding process, most founders carry a desire to shape their image. But an image is something seen, not something you decide. It exists in the eyes of the beholder. No one cares how much effort you've put in. They only see you in the 5 seconds you appear on packaging, in a sticker, or in a fleeting glance on a crowded shelf. And if you fail to evoke the right feeling, all your heartfelt values will be missed without anyone even noticing. It's a mistake to think that being beautiful is enough. Beauty is a concept often mistaken for close enough. You can design the perfect package in terms of layout, color, and proportions. But if it doesn't reflect the spirit the buyer is looking for, that beauty becomes meaningless. People don't buy something because it looks perfect. They buy it because they see a part of themselves in it. And what activates that feeling is not technique, but a visible truth. So how do you uncover that truth? Not through market surveys, not through dry data, but by stepping outside yourself, sitting down, listening, without judgment, without leading. When a brand pauses long enough to hear how others feel, it begins to speak in the right tone. Not louder, but just enough at the right moment for the other person to quietly nod. A successful brand doesn't talk much, it just speaks right. Success doesn't come from having a strong identity. It comes from having a right one. And the right isn't approved by a board of advisors. It's not dictated by online trends. It comes from real experiences. Someone sees a product and thinks of their grandfather. Someone else feels a familiar breath. When a brand awakens personal memories, it crosses the line of function. And when users feel emotionally connected for no apparent reason, that's when the brand truly lives in their world. A brand doesn't begin with what you want to say. It begins with what others need to feel. They don't care about your mission if they can't sense the value meant for them. And they won't stay because the product is good, but because the emotion is right. If you fail to touch that, the brand will just be an empty shell, no matter how beautiful it is. Let go of the need to assert yourself. Learn to face the truth. Because a brand is not born in the mirror. It's born in someone else's eyes. Part 2. The self and the others. A necessary flip in brand thinking. A brand is not a stage for the ego to perform. It is a place for empathy to speak. Many brands begin with a personal dream, and that's not wrong. But when stepping into the market, if a brand still speaks in the language of the inner self, users will remain on the outside. They don't come to hear you talk about yourself. They come to feel that they are being spoken to. To achieve that, the brand must make a pivotal shift from "I want to tell" to "they need to hear." It's the transformation from instinct to strategy. The danger of ego lies in how reasonable it seems. You know what you've been through. You know why you started. You think that's enough for others to empathize, but it's not. The market doesn't operate on sincerity. It operates on emotion. And emotion is not driven by reasons, but by reflection. If a brand refuses to step away from the center and let the user into the story, then no matter how good the product is, emotional connection will not form. This is not a call to abandon identity. On the contrary, this is about shaping identity through the user. When you step out of yourself to listen, you don't lose yourself. You simply see yourself more clearly through someone else's lens. The magic is, at that moment, the brand becomes more real, deeper, and more alive. It's no longer, I want to create something special, but what in me can genuinely reach another person. The self is the beginning, but the others are where the brand lives. If you don't shift, the brand will become a monologue. And consumers don't stay for one-way conversations. They want to be seen, to be understood. And to achieve that, you must dare to step back from the center. Let them be the protagonist. Design everything around their journey. When that happens, the brand is no longer just a name, it becomes a companion in their mind. Shifting from self to others is not abandoning your essence, it's refining it. It's not about changing to please the market, but to reflect more clearly the values already within. By understanding the user, the brand finds itself, not through words, but through connection. And when that connection is deep enough, users won't just buy the product. They'll carry the brand further, through their own storytelling. Part 3. The journey into the customer's mind, not just research. To make your brand live in the consumer's mind, you must dare to step into their world. Not through a survey, not through cold behavioral data, but through immersion, through role-playing. You cannot build a brand for someone if you haven't lived a day in their emotional state. What brings them joy? Where do they feel frustrated? What do they feel is missing? And what do they secretly long for, without ever saying it? To know these things, you must remain silent and observe as if you've never understood anything about them. Many people confuse customer research with customer empathy. One is the collection of information. The other is a transformation, seeing the world through different eyes. You may know their age, income, and consumption habits, but that doesn't make you close to them. Only when you understand that people don't choose products, they choose feelings, will every design, every word, and every strategy change. It will no longer be, we do this because it's reasonable, but we do this because it helps them see themselves. Entering the customer's mind is not about finding ideas. It's about re-examining the reason your brand exists. If you say you represent something, does it appear in their mind? If not, you're merely monologuing. This journey helps you understand where you stand in their mental space. And the scary part is, sometimes you are nowhere at all. Not because the product is bad, but because you've never spoken a language they understand. You are talking, but they are not hearing, because you've never shared the same frequency. Putting yourself in the user's shoes is also the harshest test of consistency. Do the things you believe in truly show up at every touch point? Can what you promise be felt in the first 3 seconds when they see you? Emotions don't lie. You can explain everything rationally, but the customer's feelings will make a judgment in just one heartbeat. If you want to be trusted, you must design that emotional experience with vivid precision and never miss a beat. This journey also reveals surprises. Many brand builders discover they are loved for reasons completely different from their original expectations. Perhaps they thought customers came for tradition, but it was really a sense of safety. Perhaps they believed the packaging was impressive because of the color. But in truth, it was the handwritten font that made people feel touched. The truth does not lie in the meeting room. It lies on the other side of real experiences. Ultimately, entering the customer's mind is not about pleasing them. It's about respecting the world they live in. They don't need a brand to chase after them. They need a brand that dares to listen, to reflect, and to live up to its promises. When you understand what's happening inside them, you stop rambling. You begin to speak right, short, true, and precise. And that is when the brand no longer shouts, yet is still heard. No longer chases, but begins to walk alongside. Part 4. User Portrait. An emotional map, not a spreadsheet. Building a user portrait is not about labeling demographics, age, occupation, income. They are all just shells. A brand doesn't need to know who the customer is on paper. It needs to know what makes them pause, smile, and resonate. Consumers don't make decisions based on numbers, but based on emotions. And emotions don't live in Excel sheets. They live in moments when eyes meet the packaging, when a story is heard, or when an image evokes something deeply personal and human. A good user portrait doesn't help you sell. It helps you speak correctly. It helps the brand know when to stay silent, when to suggest, and how long to wait for the other person to feel something. A portrait is not just for targeting. It defines how you show up in their world. You don't show up through declarations. You show up through the reactions they have toward you. And if that reaction is indifference, then no matter how much you invest, you're still speaking the wrong language. Creating a user portrait is an act of rejecting vagueness. You can't serve everyone. Everyone is different. But if you dare to choose a specific group, you can become everything to them. Name them. Imagine how they live, where they shop, what they argue about, and what mood they're in when they reach for your product. The more specific, the more vivid the brand becomes. The more vivid, the stronger the emotional impact. And where emotion exists, buying decisions follow. Don't build a user portrait just for the marketing team to forget. Use it as an emotional map for every action. From packaging design, color selection, content writing, to how comments are replied, everything must align with the person you serve. If you create a portrait that's young and energetic, the brand shouldn't speak in overly academic language. If you serve thoughtful users seeking connection, then everything must be designed as a meaningful conversation. A user portrait doesn't need to be perfect, but it must be real. And reality doesn't come from imagination in a boardroom. It comes from observation, listening, and dialogue. Ideally, you step into their world, live like them, feel like them, and from there, filter what's important and what's excessive. When a brand clearly knows who it is serving, it no longer feels lost. It no longer chases trends. It becomes grounded because it knows what it's doing, for whom, and why it matters. A user portrait is not a destination, it is a foundation. From that foundation, everything is built: design, tone, behavior. It's not a pretty presentation, it's an emotional compass. And when everyone in the team looks toward the same portrait, a real person with real emotions, the brand will speak the same language, act in the same direction, and be felt as one cohesive entity. That's when the brand is not just recognized, but loved. Part 5. Naming a person. When a persona is more than an abstract image. An ideal customer profile isn't enough for a brand to understand its audience. More than an age, an income level, or a few personality traits, what's needed is a specific, vivid human being with a unique life, joys, and worries. When a brand starts to assign a real shape to the person it serves, every decision becomes clearer. No longer is it about a generic user, but an individual with emotions and reactions, and that very individual will deliberately influence all brand behavior. Humanizing the persona turns strategy into real experience. When a brand imagines the user as a specific person, they won't write ads randomly or pick a color palette thoughtlessly. They'll ask, how would this person react to this? That question is key, because when a brand starts to communicate with its user as if with a real human being, language becomes warmer, design becomes more appropriate, and the customer journey becomes more consistent. A strong persona is someone the team feels responsible to. When the design is off-tone or the content feels wrong emotionally, someone on the team will ask, how would they feel about this? That's when the brand develops an immune system. It self-adjusts, self-balances, not with rules, but with empathy. The persona ceases to be a research tool. It becomes a moral, emotional, and aesthetic compass. Every decision is reflected through one principle. Are we respecting the emotions of the person we serve? Nothing is more effective than having everyone on the team look toward one shared image of the user. It ends unnecessary arguments. No one says, I think this looks better, or this makes more sense. The question becomes, which one would they choose? And this consensus makes the brand operate as a unified entity. No more misalignment across departments, no more disconnect between strategy and execution. Everything revolves around one person, one emotion, one guiding center. A persona is not decoration for a slide presentation. It is an invisible commitment that the brand exists to serve someone deeply. When a brand behaves as though it's working for one specific person, users will sense that sincerity. They'll feel understood, they'll stay longer, and they'll retell the story in their own words. Because the brand isn't trying to talk to the crowd. It's whispering exactly what that one person has been waiting to hear. Part 6. Packaging doesn't sell products. Packaging sells feelings. Packaging is where the product first speaks, and sometimes it's also the last chance if it fails to persuade. In an environment with no sales staff and no direct experience, packaging must evoke emotion on its own. It doesn't just protect the product, it also conveys part of the brand's soul. Consumers don't read technical features, they feel suitability. Great packaging doesn't say much. It simply triggers the right feeling. And when a design stirs emotion, a buying decision happens without the need for any further advertising. We are not drawn to products. We are drawn to what the product makes us feel. Packaging is the bridge for that emotion. A matte texture may evoke craftsmanship. A slightly weathered font can bring about a sense of nostalgia. A warm color palette can make someone feel like they're in their mother's kitchen. Packaging isn't just design, it's sensory instinct. In a world competing through visuals, what endures is not what stands out, but what quietly and deeply resonates emotionally. The truth is, most consumers choose a product without knowing why. They don't analyze, they react. Packaging at that point is like a first glance in a meeting. It doesn't need explanation or presentation. It needs to stir emotion, and real emotion cannot be faked. A polished but soulless design is no different from a polite greeting that feels empty. Meanwhile, one small on-tone detail, a handwritten stroke, a familiar symbol, can make someone smile, feel wistful, or feel safe. What matters is authenticity. Packaging should not try to look authentic. It must be built from truth. If your brand is about family, express it through warm, simple lines, not complexity. If it's about creativity, be bold with unconventional layouts. Great packaging doesn't chase trends. It captures the brand's soul and makes it visible. Don't ask what's trending. Ask, what will that person feel when holding it? The answer is your design direction. A common mistake is trying to say too much on packaging. They think users need to know everything. Ingredients, process, awards. But emotions don't need detail. They need signals. A brand that dares to omit will be stronger than one that tries to cram it all in. Just like in conversation, a well-timed silence speaks louder than 100 words. Packaging is a conversation that begins with emotion. Design it like a whispered hint, not a presentation. And the listener will finish the story in their own mind. Packaging isn't an outer shell. It's the beginning of an experience. If designed well, users will feel at ease before even trying the product. If designed well, they'll take photos and share, unprompted. If designed well, they'll remember and return. Packaging can't sell the product on its own, but it can trigger an emotion strong enough for action to happen naturally. And in a world flooded with noise, the right emotion is what makes a brand the chosen one. Part 7. The silence of the shelf, when there's no one left to explain. In a tasting room, you can tell stories, persuade, and make an impression. But on the store shelf, there's no one standing there to explain. No narrator, no context, no second chance. All that remains is a few brief seconds as consumers glance at the product. And in that absolute silence, the design must say something clear, deep, and right enough to make someone stop. If not, they'll walk past. Not because the product is bad, but because the brand failed to speak at the right moment. On the shelf, all brands stand on equal ground. You can't say, we're more ethical, we're higher quality, or we're more emotional, because everything is silent. Design is the only voice, and it doesn't speak in sentences, but in feelings. When a shopper sees you among countless other products, what makes them recognize you? If you can't answer that question without using words, you're not ready for the market. Because the market doesn't listen to your explanation. It reacts to intuition. That intuition comes from cohesion, from the sense that everything aligns: colors, logos, materials, layout. Any off-tone element breaks the emotional flow. And once that flow is broken, trust fractures too. Consumers don't think with logic, they feel with their entire senses. A glossy package claiming rustic simplicity? Disconnection. A modern logo on a product about tradition? Loss of trust. The shelf doesn't give you time to explain contradictions. It gives you a few seconds to earn belief. That's why the loneliness of a product on the shelf is the harshest test. It has no sympathy, no backstory, no staff to save it. The product must stand on its own, speak on its own, be chosen on its own, or be forgotten. This is where a brand must show the peak of its readiness. Everything can't just look right, it must truly be right. A brand with depth gives the design depth. A brand that understands users evokes emotion through packaging. There's no magic, only consistent honesty. Some brands try to scream on the shelf with flashy colors, loud slogans, and shocking visuals. They believe being louder gets attention. But the truth is, consumers are exhausted by visual assault. In that context, what makes someone stop isn't volume, it's tone. A design that knows restraint, subtlety, and emotional accuracy creates a sense of safety and distinctiveness. And that feeling, in the silence of the shelf, is the strongest invitation of all. So before bringing a product to market, ask, if no one introduces it, no one explains it, can this product be chosen based on design alone? If the answer is not sure, then you need to go back. The shelf won't wait for your explanation. It demands precision, consistency, and emotion from the very first glance. And if done right, you won't need to say another word. Consumers will retell the story in the way they saw it, felt it, and believed it. Part nonverbal communication. Design must be the storyteller. A brand does not express itself through voice. It appears through feeling. Every product on the shelf has no loudspeaker, no ambassador, no one to speak on its behalf. The only thing left is design. And that design must not be neutral. It must carry the story, the emotion, the identity, and the intent. Design is not just part of branding. Design is the storyteller that speaks for you in every moment you're not present. And consumers listen through their feelings. Telling stories through visuals is the subtlest art in branding, because images don't explain, they suggest. And only the right suggestion triggers a reaction. A soft curve creates a sense of warmth. A sharp, square block evokes stability and trust. Visual communication is powerful because it requires no time to be understood, but demands absolute precision to resonate. If you miscommunicate even slightly, the perception deviates by miles, and no one buys something that feels alien or disconnected. The visual language must be consistent across every touch point. People don't just look at packaging. They see social media posts, websites, posters, business cards. A different look in each place is the fastest way to kill trust. A strong brand tells the same story, no matter where it appears. And that story doesn't need to be long. It just needs the right tone. Like a friend you always recognize in a crowd. Not because they shout, but because their style is always clear and consistent. Consumers have no duty to decode your brand. You can't expect them to sit down and analyze symbols, explain color choices, or justify aesthetic decisions. If a design needs too many words to be understood, then it has already failed. Great design makes people instantly feel deep in their subconscious, this is for me. It doesn't demand reasoning. It hits directly at emotion. And if that emotion aligns with an unspoken desire, the brand has already won. Don't let your brand visuals become beautiful but soulless. A beautiful design may get someone to look, but a design that tells a story is what makes them remember. And people only carry a brand forward if they remember it. Design must be a voice without words, an identity without introduction, a feeling without repetition. When that happens, the brand is no longer something to look at. It becomes something to feel. And when people begin to feel, they begin to trust. Part 9. Discovery is not an interview. It's the removal of the mask. Don't call it an interview. No one needs to sit down and answer textbook questions about mission, vision, or differentiation. The discovery phase doesn't exist to fill in a template. It is a journey of peeling back, exposing, and digging deep. It doesn't demand professionalism. It demands truth. If the conversation doesn't touch real emotions, then all the answers are just masks. And a brand built on a mask can collapse at the lightest touch from the market. Discovery is not for those who like control. It is for those who dare to get a little lost to find what's truly worth keeping. In that room, all roles should be left outside. No more CEO, founder, or strategist. Only people telling stories of what troubles them. Every small thing, a frustrating experience, a disappointing moment, a shelved dream, is a clue to the brand's identity. No data is more powerful than an unspoken memory. The person leading discovery is not a meeting facilitator. They are a gold miner. They must bravely walk through emotional fog to find what no one has named yet. Sometimes, answers come not from clever questions, but from the right moment of silence. When the person pauses, furrows their brow, and searches for words, that's when the truth begins to emerge. No one can state brand identity in smooth language, but they can feel it if guided the right way. And once they feel it, they begin to believe. Many walk into a discovery session expecting to find a strategy. They expect maps, directions, formulas, but the most valuable things come from what was never planned. A childhood story, a terrible feeling from being misunderstood, a small, overlooked detail. Discovery is the journey from chaos to clarity, not by logic, but by emotion. It is in that messiness that brand identity takes shape, not glossy, not perfect, but real. And what is real connects. The greatest value of discovery is not the insight collected. It's the shift in perspective. When the brand team hears themselves retell things they'd forgotten, they reconnect with the original reason. That reason isn't on a slide. It's in the pause when recalling a memory. It's in the sigh when admitting something never told. Strong brands don't come from what's learned. They come from removing what's been fake for too long. A brand can hire a creative director, a strategist, or a top-tier designer. But if it doesn't dare to sit down and discover who it really is, everything becomes meaningless. The design will be beautiful but hollow. The message will sound good but feel disconnected, and the audience will sense that something is off. Discovery is not a starting step. It is the brand's rite of passage. Once through it, you're no longer just a product maker. You become a storyteller. With roots, with heart, with soul. Part 10. Questions that reveal essence and strip down entire mindsets. Not all questions are of equal value. Some only exist to fill out forms. Others open up entirely new frames of reference. Brand discovery sessions shouldn't be measured by how many questions are asked, but by how many times the other person falls silent to think. When you ask the right question, you'll see their facial muscles shift. When you ask the right question, you'll hear genuine hesitation. That's when the marketing language starts to crack. And what's real inside begins to emerge, demanding to be named. The right questions are never technical. They are human. What makes you proudest when you look at the product you've created? What moment made you want to give up? If this brand disappeared, who would miss it the most? These questions aren't found in brand training manuals. They live in the hearts of real people. And when asked, people can't answer with facts. They are forced to return to emotion, where the brand is truly born. When founders answer these questions, they're not just providing information to strategists. They are looking in the mirror, a kind of mirror with no acting. They begin to realize what they've forgotten, where they've strayed, and what they've held onto for too long. The right questions strip away outdated thinking. You cannot renew a brand without first shedding the values that no longer serve it. And to do that, you don't need theory. Just one question that stops you from repeating what you've already said 10 times. A great asker is not someone who speaks much. It's someone who knows when to stay silent. A good question doesn't need elaboration. It's like a gentle strike to a forgotten memory. And if the person isn't afraid of the pain, they'll begin to speak truthfully. They'll talk about their frustration with an increasingly fake market. They'll share the pain of feeling misunderstood. They'll admit they sometimes do things just because that's how it's supposed to be. No longer remembering why. The right question doesn't end with an answer. It begins a transformation. When a mindset is placed in front of a reflective mirror, branding stops being a money-making tool. It becomes a projection of personal voice into the world. And only when thought patterns are cleansed can future decisions root in real values. No more branding just because others do. No more chasing trends. No more quickly grabbing what seems cool. What remains is what's necessary, true, and grounded. To build a meaningful brand, you must relearn how to ask. Ask to uncover. Ask to reflect. Ask so others can see what they've never seen in themselves. Not because we are wiser, but because we dare to be more patient. A brand built from the right questions is a brand that doesn't easily shake. It knows who it is, it knows why it must exist, and most importantly, it knows when to speak and when to stay silent so that the customer can speak instead. Part 11. Trace back to the root emotion. Begin with what made you most uncomfortable. Every brand is born not just from a dream, but from a discomfort. Something unacceptable. An experience so painful or infuriating that it demands a different way. That is the root emotion. rarely mentioned but more powerful than any strategic plan. When a brand returns to its root emotion, it no longer speaks in a marketing tone. It begins to express a true voice. And that voice is not for persuasion, but for protest, a response to what can no longer be tolerated. Many brands begin from disappointment. Bad service, fake products, cold staff, or a lack of humanity in the industry. That moment of, "I don't want anyone else to go through this," becomes a more enduring motivation than profit. If this emotion is ignored, the brand easily falls into a neutral zone, where everything is fine, but nothing is memorable. The initial negative emotion, when rediscovered, is what ignites identity. It may not be pleasant, but it's real. To reignite root emotion, you must dare to look at what makes you most uncomfortable. It's not sadness. It's what makes you angry, feel injustice, or feel disregarded. And that very feeling is the first propulsion of uniqueness. Because when you act from rational anger, you no longer build a brand out of trends. You build because you refuse to accept how things currently work. A brand is not born to join the market, but to make the market shift. Root emotion is an irreplaceable material. It doesn't come from market research or branding books. It can only be unearthed from memory and lived experience. Sometimes it's buried under polite language, the desire to please investors, or ambitions for expansion. But if you don't trace it back, every campaign is just a reenactment of something already done. And customers don't need another brand following a formula. They need a brand with a reason so deep it cannot retreat. Consumers can feel when a brand is led by genuine emotion. They see it in the eyes of the design, they hear it in the tone of voice, they believe it in every small detail. There's no need to dwell on past pain. Just make sure every action stems from an unshakable reason. Tracing back to your root emotion is not about self-pity, it's about reconnection. Once a brand returns to what once caused it the most unrest, it steps into the world with a power no one can imitate. Part 12. User segmentation. Fine-tuning the microscope for each experience. The market is not a uniform block. It's a collection of emotional layers, needs, and behaviors, each one a world of its own. Building a brand without segmenting users is like using one lens to observe everything. You'll see things blurry, misinterpret them, or miss what matters entirely. Every customer group comes to you with a different reason. And if you don't tailor the experience to speak their language, you'll say a lot. But no one will truly listen. Some come out of curiosity, seeking something new. Others are experts, arriving to test quality. Some just want a sense of safety, familiarity, and ease. Everyone approaches with a different mindset, and if you only offer one approach, someone will feel left out. Segmentation is not exclusion. Segmentation enhances personalization. When a brand can speak differently to each group, without losing its identity, it becomes more intimate and more profound. Differences between groups lie not just in consumer behavior, but in emotional expectations. One group wants to be guided, another prefers independent exploration, a third wants to feel understood without saying a word. Designing for each group doesn't mean redesigning the product, but adjusting the touchpoints to suit how they receive the same message, but the way it's delivered, where it appears, its tone, its rhythm, all must be adjusted. Like a skilled director, the brand must know how to switch camera angles without changing the plot. Segmentation also helps brands prioritize correctly. Not every group holds the same strategic value. Some bring in revenue, others generate buzz. Some secure long-term trust. Understanding each layer helps you know where to invest and whom to nurture. Some need to be won from the first try. Others need long-term cultivation. Segmentation frees a brand from the trap of pleasing everyone, guiding it to choose the right battle, the right person, the right moment. Segmentation doesn't make a brand more complex. It makes it more precise. The bigger the brand, the less it can apply the same experience to all. Without emotional segmentation, customization becomes arbitrary, random, and unstrategic. But with a segmentation map, every adjustment has a reason. Not because it looks good, but because this fits Group A and must be avoided for Group B. That's when the brand starts to behave like a deep organization. Not just a creative impulse. Consumers don't need you to fulfill every desire. They need you to understand what they're truly searching for. When a brand segments its users, it stops speaking broadly. It starts speaking personally and accurately. No need for more channels, no need for a bigger budget, just a sharper point of view. And from that, even small actions become purposeful. Consumers will feel it, that this brand isn't trying to please everyone. It has listened and is responding to the right people in the right way. Part 13, Optimizing Experience by User Segment. Not everyone needs the same message. A single message can't do the job for everyone. Even if a brand has clearly defined its core values, trying to apply the same words to every user segment only dilutes everything. Emotion is a subtle thing. It must be awakened with the right approach. Each user group, with its own behaviors, mindset, and needs, must be called in a different way. Some are stirred by visuals. Others respond to words. Some need atmosphere. Not everyone hears, sees, or feels in the same way. Experience optimization by segment means deep understanding and precise response. A brand cannot create a generic experience and expect everyone to resonate. For those seeking novelty, the design must stimulate. For traditionalists, stability and clarity are needed. For neutral users not yet committed, gentle but meaningful touch points are best. Every decision, from writing captions, selecting images, to arranging space, must align with behavior. A good design is not just aesthetically right, it must be emotionally appropriate. Optimization isn't about reacting constantly to feedback. It's about thoughtful preparation from the start. Once a brand has clearly segmented its users, the team doesn't need to scramble with every comment. They already have a script. Each type of user is on a different journey, and that journey has been designed with distinct touch points, emotional hooks, and persuasion points. As a result, interactions aren't impulsive. Changes aren't random. The brand experience becomes like a symphony. Each user group is its own melody line. The biggest danger is applying the formula, one message for all. It may sound neat, cost-saving, easy to manage, but emotionally, it's ineffective. You can't speak to someone familiar with your brand the same way you speak to a first-timer. You can't use enthusiasm to approach someone who has lost trust. You can't shout at someone who's seeking subtlety. Experience optimization is a mature brand behavior. The willingness to give up oversimplification to focus on meaningful personalization. When experiences are personalized by layer, the brand doesn't need to force effects. Consumers will feel, they're talking to me, not, they're broadcasting to a crowd. This closeness can't be faked. It only comes when the brand invests in understanding users like close companions. You don't have to change your identity. You just have to learn to translate it for each context. A brand that can do this won't just be liked, it will be remembered. The most delicate part of experience optimization is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Some user groups need frequent presence. Others just need one right touch at the right time. A brand doesn't always need to appear. Sometimes the right face, at the right moment, in the right tone, is enough to leave an impression. A brand doesn't need to shout. It just needs to speak into the right ear. And if you've segmented well, designed wisely, and communicated clearly, every user group will feel as if the experience was created just for them. Part 14, Visual Reflection, where aesthetic tastes intersect with identity. Vision is not just a sense, it is an emotional gateway. Consumers see before they hear, touch, or read, and that first emotional impression shapes their initial perception. Brand design should not chase trends, but it also shouldn't ignore them. The challenge lies at the intersection. How to preserve brand identity while speaking in a visual language users are willing to receive. When you solve that equation, your brand becomes both distinctive and naturally well received, with ease and goodwill. A strong brand design is not one that looks beautiful. It's one that is right. Right for the viewer's emotion, right for the brand's spirit, right for the market's timing. Many brands fail because their design is too eccentric and feels unfamiliar, or too trendy but lacks substance. The intersection between taste and identity can't be decided by intuition alone. It's the result of a dialogue between user expectations and core values, expressed through color, imagery, layout, material, and visual language. Vision is the fastest language, and also the most unforgiving. A mismatched symbol can break emotional flow. A tone of color that clashes with psychological expectations can create unconscious discomfort. When a brand reflects its identity through design, users instantly feel "this is me" without needing explanation. That is the success of visual communication, to create the right feeling without a single word. And in an age overwhelmed by imagery, the brand that connects through sight is the brand that wins. Every design element is an unspoken sentence. Every aesthetic choice is a strategic decision. No detail is meaningless. Users will look, feel, and respond whether you intended it or not. Therefore, refining visual design isn't about making things prettier, it's about making them truer. When design honestly reflects brand values and resonates with user emotions, it is no longer just recognition. It becomes presence, real and weighty. Part 15. The emotional filter. Name the user. The foundation of every decision. Every decision in the branding journey must pass through a filter. Not to limit creativity, but to ensure every choice is headed in the right direction, for the right person. A persona is not just a symbolic model, it's a living representative of the one your brand exists to serve. When the image of the ideal user is clear enough, branding no longer relies on instinct. Everything is filtered through one question. Does this create the right feeling for that person? If not, it's not enough. This emotional filter doesn't live in a form, it lives in deep roleplay. Once you clearly know who you're speaking to, their psychology, behavior, and needs, you'll stop being swayed by personal taste or spontaneous ideas. When a brand has a truly vivid user portrait, the creative team no longer asks, "Is this beautiful?" They ask, "Is this right?" Every piece of feedback revolves around one axis. Did the user's emotion get activated in the intended way? When every team uses the same emotional filter, the brand begins to function as a unified body. No more off-tone voices, no more out-of-sync designs, no more content that clashes with the brand's atmosphere. From visuals to tone of voice, from online interactions to the feeling of holding the product, everything reflects a shared consistency led by the user's emotional lens. Unspoken, but felt. And once it's felt, it becomes trust. A brand without an emotional filter falls into a spiral of impulse. Designs are attractive, but irrelevant. Content is clever, but off-target. Disjointed emotions breed doubt. Users don't know what the brand stands for, who it's for, or what it represents. But when every decision is viewed through the user's emotional lens, every brand behavior becomes clear. Not done because it sounds good. Not changed because we need to be different. Only done because it's right. For those who need to feel it. You don't need to overload your brand strategy with complexity. Just hold on to one principle. Who are you serving, and what makes them feel understood? When that image is clear enough, the brand no longer needs excessive consultation. Everything automatically eliminates what doesn't belong. Not because the brand is rigid, but because it has a core. That core doesn't live in a document, it lives in the team's heart. When they all look at one person and say, "We're doing this for them." When the user's emotion becomes the center, every experience becomes intentional. The brand is no longer ruled by trends, fleeting aesthetics, or shallow feedback. It stays true to its path, yet remains flexible. It creates, but not randomly. It stays consistent, but not rigid. Every time a decision is made, instead of asking, "Is this trending?" the brand only needs to ask, "Will that person feel seen in this?" If yes, then everything is already right. Some will applaud the honesty, others will be outraged by the naivety. Because this video doesn't just tell a story about building a brand, it bluntly exposes a hard-to-swallow truth. That emotion doesn't sell unless it's wrapped in strategy, and sincerity might be the most luxurious thing in business. A family-driven brand, or a positioning tactic, a journey of discovery, or a calculated script, to the believer, this is an inspiring journey. To the skeptic, it's a cleverly staged performance. And that's exactly what makes this video dangerous. It forces you to take a side, even when you don't want to. Thank you for watching the whole video. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.